Welcome everyone to another mortgage. What call is this? Another Monday Win by Noon webinar. I am your host and founder of Win by Noon, Todd Bookspan, and I am joined by my co-host and founder of Plug and Play SM, Deborah Bird. What's up, Deborah?
Hello, I am all the way from Florida today. We just had a big storm, so now the sun's come out, so it's a lot brighter than what it was, but we are in Jacksonville, Florida today.
That is
Where are
exciting.
you?
That is exciting. I just got out of the dentist, so if I start to drool out of one side of my mouth, that's, just whatever it is, just ignore it.
That's really me from smacking Todd with him giving me grief last night on the Cowboy game, but
No, I
we won't.
wasn't going to say anything about it. It was a great first half, a really scary third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, and then it ended just as it was supposed to end.
Oh, really? I thought we almost had it. Starting the fourth, I was like, I think we're going to come back with 17-20. I was really excited.
Well, I watched the Cardinals, and the Cardinals in that situation always lose. So I sort of felt the Eagles were going to just do what the Cardinals do, and they didn't. So that was great.
Well, we go next weekend. Sorry, I should not be eating a sweet tart.
That's all right. That's all right. So today's goal in 30 minutes is to really talk about what what we learned at Sales Mastery last week. Deborah, you were there with the Nerd Squad and you learned alongside of them. And I was there with the Bookspan Baker team and I learned alongside of them. And, as my habits at Sales Mastery were different this time than before. And so for me, the last couple of Sales Masteries, I've gone as Todd, the Win by Noon guy, and I have spent my time networking and interviewing people and less time inside the room learning. And since my team was there, I actually plugged in for probably 85-90% of the content and learned alongside of them so that I could lead them at dinner with questions. And then we're actually gonna have a follow-up meeting at the end of this week where everyone's got to show up with what their individual commitments are and then discuss what they want from the team, right? As a team leader, that is my job, my job to do that. And so I just thought we would just kind of go back and forth with different takeaways that we had. Now, certainly if any of you were at Sales Mastery and you have, some takeaways, chat looks like it's open. So yeah, we'd love to hear your takeaways if you were there, or maybe you're just here because you weren't there and you want to learn what we had to say. So why don't you go first, Deborah, and then I will go second.
Well, what I was most surprised about is when they asked in the very beginning, how many of you have never attended a Sales Mastery? Like this was your very first one. And maybe this is just me being naive, thinking, a lot of people have already been to them. There was quite a few. I mean, I would say almost half, if not more, had never been to a Sales Mastery event in their life. And so that was pretty telling to me, either people who have been in the business and they know they need to be making a shift or they need to be doing something different to get a different result, or the number of possibly new loan officers, whether it's their first career or it's a third career that they've just gotten into the space. I was really kind of blown away about that.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised too. And, it's interesting because there's definitely companies there that had, anywhere from a couple of team members up to, 30 to 50 team members. And I have a feeling a lot of those newbies were with their teams or their company. And all of you are here watching this, whether you're watching it live or on video, because you've got that same thirst for knowledge that, that they have. And I do feel that you can learn both ways. I feel like you can learn from being there live. And, the advantage of being there live is that you are, in theory, unplugged and you're focused on, on what's going on. I kind of joked that, my brother-in-law is one of the loan officers who works for us. And I sat next to him on the second morning and he's got his email up while they're giving the market update and he's responding to emails. And it was just super distracting. I was like, either you're going to close your computer when they come on and start talking about other stuff, or I'm going to move. And so it's that whole idea. It's like, oh no, I will be plugged in at that point. So it's the whole, piece that you guys are all here. And as my buddy, Coach Bill Hart would say, if you're going to be in, be all in. And so I would just say, how can you replicate that environment anytime that you learn? And then also think about then how can you replicate the accountability? How can you replicate, is there, some other friend you have, whether they're in your office or another person you've met somewhere that works at another company or even another state, who you can then follow up with, hey, did you watch that video? What were your top takeaways? And then compare notes with them on what their top takeaways are. And then sharpen each other. That's always just such a big, a big piece of it. I ran into a guy named RJ Crosby, who I did a mastermind with back in 2008-9 timeframe. He reminded me that he pulled up in his Maserati and I pulled up in my Prius, which I loved. Wish we still had that car. We still have a Prius, but my other daughter drives it now. That's a newer Prius. It's a 2011. We're into new cars in my family. But it was really great for us at that time. So we had this mastermind where we would watch things, listen to things, read things, and then compare notes. We're both reading. Jeremy Baxter just sent us what he learned, so that's great. And I tell you, that was the other really fun part. The other fun part was I got to meet people like Jeremy, people in our community who I just know because I see your name on Zoom, and it was just awesome. Awesome just to meet people. That was great. So, all right, I'm going to go. I'm trying to find my sales mastery folder. So what I've learned over time is I use this Remarkable, and mine's a Win by Noon edition, meaning AK I put a sticker on it that I bought from the Win by Noon store. And so I created a folder for Sales Mastery 2022, and then every speaker that came up, I took notes in there on what they said. Now, my biggest takeaways actually were the first night, and they were the statistics that Todd Duncan put up about how bad loan officers are. And they were brand new statistics, and I'm not going to share them today because I'm going to create a presentation around them and then bring them back to you guys later. But ultimately, what I would say is the statistic that I teach all the time. If you see me teach, you've been part of any of my coaching groups, it's a statistic that Todd did for Sales Mastery 2018 or 19. And it was that 94% of loan officers show up to the office with no plan for the day, and 91% have inconsistent month-over-month business as a result, right? That roller coaster. And the first thing that Todd said was, if you are not tracking, he's like, we track these numbers for our elite members. So the people who pay Todd 25, 30 grand a year to be part of his group, he requires them, that's called accountability. He requires them to record their activities and track their results, right? So he was really doing, without saying the word Win by Noon, he was doing a nice job of the argument of why everyone who was in the audience should be using Win by Noon, because it's a great system to record activities and track results. So that was probably my number one takeaway, was really how bad people were. And there, I'll bring up some of the statistics. Maybe I'll pull, they're all pictures on my phone, and I transparently haven't really made my thought pattern on each one. But the first one was that, how many of you are tracking, and then hardly anyone raised their hands. And so right there, I think that was probably my biggest takeaway, was night one, Todd sharing statistics of what a poor job. And again, you already said that half those people were new. Great. Then they all have the hall pass, but the other half were experienced people, and the experienced people, hardly anyone raised their hand when Todd did it. So it was unfortunately, even though I feel like that was an above average group there, they proved his survey results. And in the end, I think that that the bottom line is I shared that with my team and said, hey, we as a team have to be better. And then I looked at each of them in the eyes and said, you need to be committed to this, because ultimately, then I feel like most of you are just one or two decisions away from greatness, right? You're probably pretty dang good, or even great already, but gosh, you could be even better if you just made a couple of decisions, committing around your disciplines, around your standards with regards to business, because then you would not be in the majority, like 90, anytime you've got 10% or less doing great things and the other 90% not doing great things, you want to be in that smaller percentage. I guess that's my bottom line.
And that's so true. There were so many loan officers that came up to me, and one kind of my other big takeaway is how much going one to many like this can really make a ripple effect and a huge impact. I got to witness many people going up to Todd, or even myself, just saying how much they appreciated us doing these calls. And so I just encourage anyone listening that you can do that too. That's the power of going on social and people feeling like they already know you. But as we were halfway through the event, I was speaking to a few. They weren't even newer loan officers. I mean, they were trying to consistently keep about 2 to 4 loans a month. Obviously, they're down from last year. And it was a common theme of people telling me they just didn't know what to do and feeling overwhelmed. And so I used the Jonathan Roach power of 75, where I said, okay, if according to the number of hours we have in a week, and you take on average a 9-hour workday, 7-hour nights of rest, and basically dumbed it down to, this is how much time you have left per day. So what are you doing with your time if you're not planning? That small tweak of the story that we keep telling ourselves, I'm so busy, and I don't know what to do. Like, where do I start? And a lot of that can get squashed. And I think sometimes that's fearful, because as I was having this conversation with one particular LO, it was almost like their story was falling flat, and it was kind of like okay, maybe I'm responsible actually for being busy, but really just not having a plan, so that I can keep telling myself I'm busy and ultimately not getting the results that I say that I want. So it was going deeper into, why are you even here? Why would you invest the time? Because it was a week away from your desk. And even if you're trying to do both and multitask, not that that's a good strategy, but if you're going to take the investment of just your time and your money, why? Like, and why not make just this one small tweak or this one change? And of course, I obviously recommended the Win by Noon planner, because I really love how it tells you exactly what to do. You don't even have to think about it. It's kind of like hiring a personal trainer when you go to the gym. It can feel very overwhelming if you haven't been to the gym in a while and you're like, okay, should I do biceps? Should I do legs? But when you have someone that's there and they already have everything laid out of how you're going to maximize that time together, it just brings clarity. And then when you do measure it, you can start to see what's working and what's not working. And so that was probably the biggest eye opener for me. Is it didn't even matter if you were brand new into the business or you had been in business for 15 years, the number of people that just don't have a plan. But I obviously wanted to get to the root of why. Like, why are people avoiding taking that 5 minutes to just be intentional about their day? Is it that they would reveal they actually have more time to do things that they're avoiding? And that's kind of what I was coming up with. My conclusion is, oh, so you actually do have time to make more calls, or to check in on your database, or to make that video that you haven't posted. And so that was huge.
I love that. I love that. I'm seeing Tom say that he loved the whole idea of being brave, right? So I would say that
Mm,
things fall into three buckets, and maybe you can sharpen me, you guys, if you think it's different three buckets. I think you have motivation and inspiration, right? Because you have some people that as their speaker was their role. You have some people who talk about planning and discipline, right? So of course, that's the stuff I get all nerded out about, that I love. And then you have the people who are talking about tactical and strategic things you can do in your business. So my favorite loan officer up on stage presenting was Cody Hardridge. He works for Cornerstone in Oklahoma. And Todd wanted him to show a high trust realtor interview. And I talked to Cody afterwards, because I thanked him for his presentation and told him I thought it was amazing. And he, Todd wanted him to just pull someone out of the audience and then role play it. And he just said, I don't feel like I'm going to have the impact I want. So he actually had a realtor fly out there with him. And of course, therefore, he's done the high trust with her before, but he's trained her on the high trust interview. And she's actually landed builder clients because she does the high trust interview for her potential clients. And really the long and the short of the high trust interview is you, again, as always, asking more questions and talking less, right? As my kids always say, Dad, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? Listen more and talk less. And really asking, okay, what's important about success to you? It's asking questions around that and digging deeper, like what is truly important to them. And normally what happens when you do that, like, so, if I ask Deborah, she's going to say, oh, maybe she says to make money. And then I said, well, why is it important to make money? Eventually you get, if you dig into that 3 to 8, maybe even 10 times, but typically it's 3 to 6 times, you're going to get to the point that either they want to leave a legacy or it's spiritual, right? It's around their faith and that they feel like that is really important. And then he said, awesome, well, tell me what's important about a loan officer relationship to you. And she said what we would always hear: communication. He's awesome. Well, tell me, what does communication look like to you? So it's the question after the question. And he just kept digging deeper on that. In fact, maybe Deborah, I'll put that on our to-do list. Maybe you and I will do a call in the future. Either we'll get someone like Cody on here to do it with us, or we will do it ourselves, because you and I could both do it.
Bet I can get Cody. I
Yeah,
can get him.
I would hope so. I mean, I'm friends with Cody. I know you are. So
Yeah.
I think that would be great. But I don't want to spend the whole time talking, but I'll tell you that's impactful, though. You can, I'm sure, find examples of that. So, but just know Deborah and I are now committed. It's on our to-do list to do that. So that was really impactful to me, because I felt like I told my team at dinner that night, like, hey, you all can do a better job at this. And guess what? I can do a better job of it as well. And just kind of walked through it from from a responsibility perspective. I really feel like loan officers show up and throw up. We're the smartest person in the room. And so therefore we just want to tell everyone how great we are. And so if someone would have said, hey, I think communication is great, normally as a loan officer, we'd say, well, my communication is amazing. Or if they say, I'm sorry, if they say communication is important to me, the loan officer would reply, oh, I'm the best communicator, I do this, I do that, here's what you're going to get. And that's not really a high trust conversation. What it is great. Tell me more about that, because you want to be able to take notes in your notebook, and you want to be able to say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that communication to you means A, B, and C. And guess what? You probably are great at it. You probably are doing it. But until you listen to it to confirm that that's what the referral partner really wants, then you're not being a great partner, and you're not going to connect with them, because in the end, they're going to say, wow, Todd really liked himself, but he didn't listen to me. He didn't ask me what was important. And when they feel heard, guess what? Then they're like, wow, I like Todd because he listened to me. He heard me. I want to do business with him.
Well, that even goes to your clients. And Todd had a really good question, whether if it were a borrower, asking them what is important to you about buying a home, or what is important to you about becoming a homeowner, and getting deeper underneath just the surface level questions that we typically ask. Hopefully we're going beyond just what's your social security number, date of birth, is this a primary, secondary home? But this also reminds me of the acronym LOVE. So I don't know if you remember this from Amplify, where you listen, observe, validate, and then expand on what they say. So I have like etched that out in my brain, where I'm working at being a better listener and listening with the intent of making sure that they feel understood, and not that I do or that I'm even understanding, but it's just giving them that freedom and range to keep going. And so I love the question after the question. He did that at the High Trust Sales Academy, which they do have coming up at the end of November and December, which was amazing. I mean, you get to practice that high trust interview, and I've used that in every practice of everything I've ever been from the day I first took his course. So I've worn multiple different hats and left mortgage for just a few years and then came back. And so regardless of what I did, I could apply that same interview style that is very much relationship based and trust centered, which to me, that will exponentially impact no matter what you do.
All right.
Even with employees or staff members.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So so I want to highlight something that Jeremy said in his. He said the biggest takeaway was the realization that I had fully believed the lie that I could never be as successful as the others on stage. I said goodbye to that self-doubt. So I love that, because there was two things I was going to say. So first off, of course, my favorite speaker was Daniel Harkavy, only because he's a great friend and he's been such a big influence on my life. And so since we're talking about that, what I would say is he said, the number one way people accomplish a goal is believing they can, right? Again, it's a blinding flash of the obvious, but really, are you pushing yourself? Are you setting a big enough goal? And he just said, what do you believe? And then Mark, what was the chicken guy's name? Mark Miller.
Is it Miller?
Yeah. He opened up and he said, what you're doing is giving you what you've got, right? So again, we talk about that, like how you show up here is how you show up everywhere. So what you're doing is giving you what you've got. Are you willing to make the choices to create change? And so, I think, again, it's just that whole idea of slowing down to speed up. And so, I believe all of you who are taking the time to be here can be as great as you want to be. I think you all know my why is to help you reach your potential, whatever you believe it to be. And I don't believe everyone wants to be on stage at Sales Mastery. I don't believe everyone wants to be $100 million producer, but I believe all of you want to be successful. And you really have to figure out what that level of success is. And David Goggins wrote the book, You Can't Hurt Me. And, if you haven't listened to that book, don't read it, listen to the book. It's, a guy who's just a total badass, who's the most disciplined person you're going to find in the world. Like he just does crazy stuff, like physically. And when he posts to Instagram, it's him running, and he runs like John Downs, like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And he posted today and he said, if you set a business plan, if you set a goal that you believe you can accomplish, that you're really just creating something that should be on your to-do list. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound, right? It's not really if it's something that's easy for you to accomplish, it's not really a goal. And so you're going to definitely hear me talking a lot over the rest of Q4 on goal setting from two perspectives. One is, how can I help you set a higher goal and get you there? And then more importantly for you is, how can then you take that, translate that to your referral partners to help them set a bigger goal and help get them there? Because guess what? If you can help your referral partners set big goals and get there, that means they're going to be referring you more business, right? And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you can do that all together. And so I'm going to be making a big push on that. You'll just see lots of stuff on that coming out as as well. So that is my thought there to expand on what Jeremy said.
Well, I don't think we could have this call not mention Nick, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's with a V. Do you know how to pronounce his last name?
It's like Vukovic or something like
Virginia.
that, but I
Yes.
don't think I can say it right either.
And so those who weren't there, he's the one you may have seen him on other. He was big on YouTube. He's the one. He doesn't have any arms or legs, and he's now a professional speaker. And he just has a way of shooting it to you straight, where even the way that he started, he's like, all right, everybody up on your feet. And he's like, making comment. Obviously, in my mind, I was thinking, here I was just complaining about sitting in these conference chairs where my back was getting kind of sore. And he says, stand up on your feet. He doesn't even have 2 feet, so it was just being
All right,
grateful for
there's a
oh,
picture
there
of him
we
right there.
go.
There's me and
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And I'm not one who normally, I was talking to him the whole time. So thankfully, if I play this live, I don't know if I can play it. Like, I'm just talking to him the whole time while I'm up there. So I was laughing. I was really glad that they got a picture of me without my mouth open. Yeah,
Awesome. You got a picture with them.
he was super
Wow.
inspirational. Well, my brother-in-law wanted to. I was like, all right, we're going to dinner, and have people waiting for me. But
Yeah.
I was there to be part of my team and hang out.
I mean, just really being grateful for things that we take for granted. I mean, I was looking at him and I was thinking, he can't dress himself, he can't scratch his nose. I'm sure he's had some really tough moments. And one of the strategies that he said is think about, your worst day that you've had. He actually said think of the three. And in my mind, I was thinking of when I had viral meningitis, which was just exactly like a year ago this time. And it was miserable. It was awful. It was the worst pain and experience of my life. But now looking back, I'm like, but I didn't die. I mean, but we figured it out. And yes, it may have taken a while, but here I am and I'm doing much better today than what I was a year ago. And so when you can choose to then focus on maybe the worst days and how it could have been worse and how there are other people who do have it worse than you, you can wake up and really be grateful for just the small things that, as much as just dressing yourself and being able to hug your children, because that was the other thing I thought. He doesn't ever get to just wrap his arms or like scratch the backs of his kids. And sometimes when it's late and I'm exhausted and that's the last thing that I want to do, but all four of them come up at the same time, it's like, can I have my back scratched? But I was thinking, here, he doesn't even get to do that. He doesn't even know what that feels like. And they don't know what that feels like to be embraced from their dad in that way. And so he was inspirational, but he was also one of those that made you think, okay, get it done. Like, no excuses. Like, what are you going to be mad about today? Or, just he was incredible.
Yeah, funny. Jeremy actually gave the quote, when you hold their heart, you don't need to hold their hand. And yes,
Mm.
Tara Hart's on here, photo credit Tara Hart for my photo. So thank you. And let's real quick. I don't want to, again, we're talking about what you believe in, right? So, tell me about your button.
So it says, rumor has it we're in a recession. I'm not participating.
Right. So Todd passed those out the first night. You're a much better attendee. I left mine on the table because I'm like, I don't need any more stuff. I'm trying to be a minimalist, and I'm not very good at it yet, but that's my future goal as I continue to downsize homes. And but again, it's a belief thing, right? Are you going to be doom and gloom about all of it? And so, I think, kind of as we sail into the end, and you guys know that we always say 30 minutes and we tend to go 30 to 40 minutes, but you never know. This could be a call we get done in 30 minutes. One of the previous sales masteries, I think it was slow down to speed up, or someone said it was. So, and so I think about that when it comes to all these things that we're talking about, right? Is, you're here, you've slowed down to watch this. And so the question is when we get off of Zoom, or when you stop watching this on YouTube, do you pick up your phone and start responding to texts and to calls? Do you dump into your email, or do you just take a few minutes to slow down to say, okay, what did I hear that can help me? right? What did I hear that maybe I can implement? Okay, maybe I can figure out how to do a better, high trust interview. It's gonna sound really weird. And maybe someone else who's here, since we got a few of you who are at Sales Mastery, I didn't hear a ton of tactical, I'm a loan officer and go out and do this tactic. I would say more of it fell into the motivation and then the discipline side of things. And transparently, I wasn't in there on Friday morning because we were recording our 300th episode of the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind. And then afterwards, I met with Dave because we're got the Modern Mortgage Summit coming up in March. And so there was loan officers on the stage there, and I'll get my team's notes. So if anyone has that. So Tara Hart said she loved hearing Bill Hart tell us your family needs you. Stick to the schedule of having boundaries on business and day. It's funny if he quoted Josh Metal for that. And I knew Josh. Well, I still know Josh, but I was hanging out a lot with Josh during those times. We met up once a quarter at minimum, and hung out. And what I loved was that when I first came out with the planner, I didn't ask him to, but Josh recorded a video that he put out there and said, I love the Win by Noon planner. And he said, what I love most about it is it reminds me to be home at 5 o'clock with my family, which wasn't anything I asked him to, wasn't anything I told him to do, but it was that whole idea of, can we, be more and do more, not just in business, but as a significant other, as a parent, in some of, or even as a friend or a sibling or a child, that all those kinds of relationships that you have that may need a little bit more.
And it's being consistent. It's not making them, it's not intensity. So sometimes men or women may plan a big event for an anniversary and wonder why that's not enough when, I can't remember who it was who was speaking that day, but if you carved out just an hour, oh, I think it was Wally, actually, just an hour a day with your wife. That's it. An hour a day just to talk about your day. That compounds over time, and that consistency actually means more than just one high intense moment once a year. And even with the kids, and I think Wally shared, 30 minutes with each kid because he's like, they don't want to spend more than that much with me anyways. And even he's like, my wife, she doesn't want to spend more than an hour with me a day. But if I compartmentalize my day and put, what's most important to me as a priority, then it gets done because it is a priority. And I schedule things around that because that's a commitment that I've made. And he doesn't want to go back to the days when he was missing every meal. And I believe he shared he was going to Disney World, and even his kids were like, but Dad, like, are you going? And so, it's just making the commitment, putting it on your calendar. And if it is something that you prioritize, then it will get done because it's there.
Well, and Bill Hart was my coach for 4 years. And then I was part of Masters Coach and coached at Building Champions. So that was Masters Coach was meeting once a quarter with Daniel Harkavy and the coaches in that group. Steve Scanlon led it for years, and then Bill Hart, Michael Regan, and then I actually led it with alongside of the three of them for the 3 years that I was a coach at Building Champions. And that's why they're such a big influence on me. But one of the things that Daniel taught me was he has a weekly planning meeting with his wife where they go to lunch and they talk about it's a more of a tactical meeting. Hey, what do we both have going on, to make sure that they're both on the same page, raising kids and all that stuff, so that expectations are set and met. And then date night. And then they do a quarterly getaway, a weekend getaway for, once a quarter, just to catch up. And so I think those things are important. And I would tell you that, my wife and I, with our situation, we didn't always have a quarterly getaway, but, we would at least get away once a year, maybe twice, or, and there were some years where we got away 4 times or even more. And, we've strived to have date night every week, but it doesn't work out for us every week. We dated our children for a long time where one of us would take one daughter out and then the other one would take the other 2 daughters out. And she was always frustrated because I did fun stuff like Dave and Buster's and miniature golf. And then she did like shopping. I'm like, well, hey, I can't help that. But, think about those types of things on a personal level. But for me, I wrote it into my life plan. And then because I wrote it into my plan, then I actually took out my calendar and I scheduled those important things. And if the word life plan seems like a foreign thing to you, or that phrase, I will be teaching some life planning stuff as we get into December. So just stay tuned. I've got permission from Daniel to teach that. And it's just something I'm super passionate about.
So since we're on the talk about planning, I feel like I have a confession.
All right. That's perfect. Right. The 30-minute mark. That's a perfect time to
Yeah.
start.
So and my daughter is next to me. We're in Florida. I'm speaking for a client, and she's off for this week for fall break. So she's part of the media team, and she comes with me on these things. And we had a very early flight, and I had planned on taking my car, but there's a lot of new construction. I had clearly ran over a nail that I've just been refilling my tire when I really need to just stop and get it, you know, fixed or get it replaced.
Been there.
So I had all this intention to go in my car. And for those of you who know me, I'm a complete minimalist too. I don't even own a purse. I carry everything in my life, like all in my keychain with a little wallet that has even my social security card. And I know, don't get on to me, my driver's license, my company card, like bare minimum of what I would need if I ever needed it. Well, I left that in my car because I decided to make a different decision early this morning to Uber to the airport because there's going to be some bad weather that comes in on Wednesday in Dallas. The temperature is going to drop. And I thought the last thing I want to do is come out to a flat tire whenever we get back in town. So we get all, and we didn't check a bag. We both carried on a bag because it's a quick trip, but I have no driver's license, no credit card. And I think, okay, the flight boards in like 20 minutes. And there's no way I was going to call Jordan to see if he could bring it. There was no way we were going to make it. So thankfully I had TSA pre-check. I'm negotiating with them. Like, here's a picture of my driver's license that I have on my phone. You know, they asked me a couple of different questions. We finally get to the plane and I think, okay, great. Now the rental car that I had bought to have ready for our time here in Jacksonville, because I figured we'd go to the beach afterwards or have some fun. You can't get a rental car when you don't have a physical driver's license or even insurance, because if you were to get pulled over, then you're at risk. So I'm currently in Florida and did not have a well planned out like checklist prior, because this is not the first time I've been known to forget my wallet or driver's license when I'm flying. I've had some severe, so apparently this lesson is going to keep repeating until I learn it. But we are now in Florida with I can't get any cash out. So we are using Apple Pay, Uber Eats, Uber, and it's about a 45-minute drive to the airport. But we're going to learn from this. And the good thing is we brought snacks in our bag. But I crashed and burned on the planning for this morning, and I did
It's
not
kind of
win.
it's funny you say that because, I've got this new fancy iPhone 13, so I don't have the new 14, but it's got the thing where your credit cards are magnetic and hook on. And my wife gives me a hard time because I went, I said, hey, everywhere takes Apple Pay, but it's not true. The woman who cuts my hair doesn't, and then any Kroger store doesn't unless you actually put your credit card into their app. And so I always forget it. I'll be like, hey, honey, can I use your credit card? So I can't believe you're there without your social security card. That must be really hard.
Well, I always thought I would need that. Brittany was giving me a hard time. She's
Have you
like,
ever
why
used
do
your
you
when's the last time you pulled it out and needed it for something? I mean, I use my social security number, but I have it remembered up here. Or it's an Evernote.
I mean,
figured out.
I used to even have my birth certificate folded in there, and everyone was like, why? I'm like, I don't know if the house ever burned down. At least everything I need is in this one keychain. Like, that's literally my purse. I don't
Okay. All right. So
carry anything
here's
else
just a
out.
couple of ideas. This is just me friend to friend with all of our other friends here watching. Number one is I totally get it because I've left stuff behind before and that's got to be really frustrating. But one thing I've learned, because I'm cheap, you guys should all know this by me, I'm super cheap. But when I get a flat tire now, so I love Discount Tire, like the guy who owned Discount Tire, he's passed away, Mr. Hale, but he came and spoke to my entrepreneurship class when I was at U of A in the entrepreneurship program. I've got a lot of respect for them. And just a super great story. And they'll fix your tire for free, but it's a time constraint, right? And so there's this
mine was not fixable, just FYI. They said
well,
it
okay,
would
so
have to
then
be
they would just
replaced.
sell you a new tire. So normally
Yeah.
I actually now have AAA because I hate paying for it. I hate paying for AAA, and I have AAA. And then instead of going to buy a new battery, I make the Arizona batteries dry out. So they replace my batteries in my cars every couple of years. And then I have them do my flat tires now. And then transparently, I'm not now. They actually have me on auto renewal. They used to you just call them. It'd been 2 years and you'd be like, oh, hey, I needed them to come fix. And they go, oh, you don't currently have a membership. And then I'd pay. And then last time I called, they're like, well, if you want same day activation, it's an extra $25. So they kind of caught on that people like me were slackers. So that was a good hack. Or I go to Discount Tire in the morning and then I go to the one that has a Starbucks nearby. And then I just go sit at Starbucks and I work and I get all of my stuff done. So just think about ways that you guys can all be more productive. And then, obviously in a situation like you're in, you guys are adapting to it. So, right, when you make the things, you're just doing things that you can get around with Uber, that you can get around with Apple Pay, and that you can get delivered to your room, which is fine because you just eat fast food anyway.
Well, I didn't think when we first got in the Uber from the airport, because again, I was going to get a rental car. The guy that picked us up said, "Hey, how much did you spend for this?" I said $75. And he said, "Would you like to spend 60?" So I was like, "Sure." I mean, that sounds like a good deal. He's like, "Okay, well, just Venmo me the $60 here." And I thought, okay, I'm not thinking, and I'm a little frazzled. Well, he then cancels the Uber ride. He's like, "Make sure you cancel it on your end because I'm going to cancel it on my end." So now I'm driving with my 12-year-old daughter, and I'm thinking to myself, he could totally drive us anywhere right now. We're not being tracked. What was I thinking? Like, so I
You were
text
thinking like
my
I was
daughter, I'm
thinking,
like,
I'm like, wow, she just saved 15 bucks. And then, yeah.
well, yeah, because I'm not thinking, I'm like, "Oh, he's just being nice." The car was a little beat up, and he looked like maybe he liked some other, extracurricular activities, but I wasn't even thinking. And we're driving, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Wait a minute."
You just did that as
If
a lesson to your daughter because she was in the car, not getting in a car with strangers. So that'll never happen again.
I did the fake like call to Jordan. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I shared my location with you," and I made sure to be like loud, and it's a dark gray Ford Escape because I thought my body's going to be chopped up in an alley some way, like all because I forgot my darn wallet. Anyway,
All
so
right. So,
lots of lessons already.
so what do you think the biggest takeaways we should share about this experience that you had about that? So how can someone who's listening to this learn from it?
Well, the biggest thing is this is a lesson I've had to repeat. And so I need to just take action and have a checklist because I do fly quite a bit. And had I just had a checklist of like a reminder of, do I have my driver's license? Do I have my credit card? Do I have, my boarding pass? I had forgotten my luggage once because I was on the phone and I just went all the way to the airport and didn't have my luggage. So having a checklist should be a non-negotiable. That way I don't have to worry and have all that stuff renting space in my head of, I wonder if I forgot this. Did I get that? The checklist would just make it much easier.
Well, and it's funny because I actually have one in Evernote, but I haven't used it in a long time. And so I wonder if it's even relevant. But yeah, you just put like a notes app on your phone is what I recommend. All right. So last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to really get you guys off here because Tara just said it. Mr. Thank You, John Israel. And I've interviewed him with Dave Savage. And it was funny because I felt bad. I met him and I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And then the next morning he came up to me and said, "I apologize. I forgot we met before." And I told Dave in the morning on the walk that, "Hey, I felt bad. I didn't recognize the guy." But she said, "Mr. Thank You said, if you can't appreciate what you have now, who's to say you will be any happier when you get what you say you want?" And so think
Yeah.
about that. And what he had talked about was little things versus big things. He had written this love note to his wife, and she didn't even say like thank you for that. But then when he left the house, when they were at a coffee, and he was going to be late for a meeting, but he bought her Starbucks, turned around, left it at the door with a post-it note with a heart on it, and then got back in the car and left. How grateful she was for that. I would say that one of the things that my brother-in-law did was he actually went into the office on Saturday to catch up on work after sales mastery. And then he said he wrote love notes to not just his wife, but to his kids as well, which I thought was super cool.
Wow.
I haven't heard what the impact was on that, but I love that. And so,
John is my
so
neighbor, by the way.
is he? Oh, that's awesome. All
Yeah.
right. You guys
Yeah.
are tight then. Um,
Yeah.
so here's what I would say as kind of my wrap up, and then I'll let you close it out, Deborah. One thing I'll say is, since you are probably all in the Win by Noon and the mortgage coach groups, you all know Bill Hillstead's the smartest guy that we all know when it comes to Facebook stuff. He's launching this ERC, Employee Retention Credit Program, and it's something where you can actually make money for referring someone who owns a business to them. And he and I are doing a webinar on that at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And it's just one of these easy things. Like I asked my dentist today how many W-2 employees they had. They didn't really have enough to do it, so I didn't pitch them on it. But all sorts of businesses. So one, that's a sales pitch to all of you. It's a free program, and then if you actually fill out this form, literally with like a name and a phone number and an email, then you actually might make some money. But really, here's my bow I want to sort of put on this. As always, everyone's going to take something different out of an event, out of a Zoom, webinar like this. And so think about what were your top takeaways, slow down to speed up, start tracking. I think really in the end, anyone who's not tracking, again, you don't need my planner to do that. Just get a piece of paper, write down who you called, who you talked to, who you met with, what leads did I get, what applications did I get, and then, what's closing. And then I would squeeze pre-qualified in there. If you're a realtor, then you're going to put in there, listing appointments, buyer appointments, in escrow, and then closed. And then just pay attention to your activity, right? Every time that you can increase your activity slightly over last week or over yesterday or over last month, anytime you can increase your conversion rates by just a little bit, you're going to increase your results by a lot. So as always, thank you for being there. And then Deborah, you can put the final bow.
So my biggest takeaway was, again, what are you choosing to believe? And is it possible that you could believe in something else that would get you the results that you want? Like what if? And it kind of goes back to when I had shared what if the next 12 months could actually be your best 12 months in business to date? And kind of piggybacking off of what Jeremy had shared with just confidence. And one way to grow your confidence is by taking consistent action, because when you know you can depend on yourself and you make that commitment and you honor it, you start to trust yourself more, and it does grow your confidence, which is going to help you be more successful and attract successful people into your life. So don't believe in self-doubt, squash it, and choose to believe in a different story and go after what you want. You are worthy, you are good enough, we're all capable. It's just putting pen to paper and creating a plan and not changing the end result, but maybe you have to pivot or adapt, kind of like what we did today to be in Florida.
Love it. Love it. All right. Appreciate you, Deborah. Appreciate all of you for taking time to be there. It was great seeing those of you, the three of you who at least here, I know we're at Sales Mastery. Tom, Jeremy, Tara, appreciate all of you for being here. And thanks for saying hi, spending time, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we've made some commitments on some future guests, so we'll be having those folks on. See y'all.